The most consequential game in the history of the NFL regular season will be played on Sunday night in the Motor City. You got the 14-2 Minnesota Vikings against the 14-2 Detroit Lions. The first matchup between two 14-win teams in the history of the National Football League. We can actually show you the numbers about how close the records. 14-14. The line, I think, is perfect. These days, the NFL, home teams automatically get 2.5 points. You know what the line is? Detroit's at home. Detroit's favored by 2.5. Essentially, Vegas is like, hey, let these two teams play it out and see who the best team is, and not only the NFC North, but the number one seed in the NFC. We could show you how close these teams were when they played last time. Show up the numbers. Shout out to Alfred for putting this graphic together. Okay, you see 31-29, the Lions won. Lions had 8 more yards. Just 8 more yards than Minnesota did. Only 3 more passing yards than than Minnesota did. Only 5 more yards than the Vikings did. Vikings had 0.4 more yards per play. Lions had 3 more first downs. Exactly dead even on third down, 40%. Dead even on penalties, 8. Dead even on turnovers, 1. And Minnesota had the ball for essentially a little less than 2 minutes more than the Lions did. These teams are dead even. The Lions have a better offense than Minnesota. Minnesota's a much better defense than Detroit. Coaching, great coaches for different reasons. Kevin O'Connell is an elite schematic guy. Dan Campbell's a great motivating guy. Both teams have coordinators we think are absolute, no doubt, future head coach in this league. Brian Flores with the Vikings and Ben Johnson with the Detroit Lions. So you're seeing a clash of titans right now, and I think this game could very well decide, and I'm going to go so far as to say it will decide, potentially, who represents the NFC in Super Bowl 59 in New Orleans against whoever wins the AFC. Here's why I say that. And I'll predict the game at the end of the show. You guys know how much I love Detroit, but what Minnesota's been doing this year with Sam Darnold making, we know Sam has NFL starter and even franchise quarterback talent, didn't have the coaching. I sold stock on Darnold because I loved him out of college. The Jets was a disaster. Panthers, he's been great with the Vikings, as I talked about in the last few days of the show. I think this game is far bigger for Minnesota than it is for Detroit for a few reasons. Number one, if Detroit loses this game and becomes the loser of this game, unless there's a tie, knock on wood, there's not that. By the way, if there's a tie, Detroit wins the division and gets the 1 seed. So putting that out there. The loser of this game, 14-3 team, that's the 5 seed and has to go on the road the entire playoffs, that's just how it's been going for a long time in the NFL. Great teams and wildcard teams and won Super Bowls. By the way, it's not like it's the end of the road for the loser of this game. We could see these teams face again in 2 or 3 weeks. Number one reason for Minnesota, or first reason that it's more big for them. If Detroit loses, falls to 14-3. Okay. Detroit went undefeated in the regular season on the road. Detroit Lions, undefeated 8-0 in the regular season away from Ford Field. We can actually show you the numbers about the historic nature of that in the Super Bowl era. If you go undefeated on the road, you usually win. 72 Dolphins won the Super Bowl. 82 Washington won the Super Bowl. So did the 84 Niners and the 89 Niners. Now the 90 Niners, were undefeated on the road, lost by the absolute skin of their teeth to the Giants in 1990 in the NFC title game. 0-1 Rams lost the Super Bowl. 0-7 Patriots lost the Super Bowl. 14 Cowboys lost the divisional round because Dallas is Dallas. 2016 Patriots, iconic comeback. 2020 Chiefs lost to Brady and the Bucks. 2024 Lions remains to be seen. So basically, take out Dallas. You are the worst case scenario. If you go undefeated on the road, you're getting to the NFC title game and you're likely getting to the Super Bowl. So Detroit, in their case, if they lose, we're like, we're fine. Now, the difference between the Lions, where they lose this game and have to go on the road to those teams, every single one of those teams won their division. I'm almost certain without fail, all those teams won their division. Detroit would not have. And so I think Detroit would be fine. Minnesota, second reason it's more big for them. As great as the home field advantage is in Detroit, and those Lions fans are the best. I've had many interactions with them in the last couple of years in this period that I've been so pro-Lions. Great fan base. That home field advantage at US Bank Stadium is unbelievable. I would put it up there, not quite with, the Superdome fans in New Orleans with Breeze and Peyton were making their runs, not quite with Arrowhead Stadium with Mahomes and Reed, and Arrowhead's always been loud even prior to this dynasty. It's not far off. When US Bank Stadium gets rolling, you can feel it. There's certain stadiums or certain arenas, certain venues in sports, when it gets loud, it's like you could feel it through the television. That's Minnesota. They would miss out big time if they don't get that. Number 3 for the Vikings. And I think this matters because listen, certainly I'm not a Darnold skeptic anymore. I wouldn't go so far as say I'm a Darnold believer now because, hey, I've never seen it before. I've seen Goff play in a Super Bowl. I've seen Goff win playoff games. I've seen this Detroit Lions team who had never done anything as a collective unit before, going to last year's playoffs, gets the NFC title game, probably should have won that game. This is far and away not even close to the biggest game of Sam Darnold's career. Goff, where would this rank? Like 7th, 8th? It's big. It's the Lions obviously want the 1 seed. It'd be huge for them. But Goff has played Super Bowls. He's playing NFC title games. He's won a lot of playoff games. He's used to this. This is nothing. He's at home. He's comfortable. Great O-line. Darnold, different story. So I think listen, we've seen plenty of games where it's win or go home. Winner wins the division, loser season is over. But in most instances, the 2011 game between the Giants and Cowboys being the exception because those were 2, we thought, kind of average playoff teams. Going to that game, Giants won that game, went on to win the Super Bowl. That was the second Eli Coughlin game against the Patriots. Take that game out. Most winner go home, week 17, or in this case, 18 games to decide the division or the playoffs. Usually that team gets bounced relatively early in the postseason. Games between 2 excellent teams. I remember the Niners and Seahawks played a game like this a couple of years ago where it decided, it didn't decide the 1 seed for Seattle, but would have decided the NFC West. Okay, with Seattle, I think got stopped on the 1-yard line. Tell me if you heard that one before. Seattle was still in the playoffs. They weren't going to get the 1 seed if they won. This is the first matchup between 2 14-win teams ever, the biggest game in NFL regular season history. The winner is riding high, the top seed in the conference. Both teams have home field advantages, especially Minnesota. The U.S. makes Stadium's a hard place to go and win. Only team that did it this year was the Lions. Go figure. Home field advantage, all that. You are you first round bye. I think at this point would be the favorites in Vegas to win the NFC and go to the Super Bowl in New Orleans. And the loser, it's not season over. We're still great. We won 14 games. But all of that, we lost 3 games this year. Folks, Atlanta may get in the playoffs with 8 losses. I'm sorry, the Lions or the Vikings will have lost 3 games. Falcons may get in with 8 losses, potentially. And yet we'll be looking up. Yeah, we don't get a single home playoff game. There's a natural, these guys are human. They're great players, coaches, etc. They're human. There's going to be a natural kind of come down moment where it's like, dang, all this work we put in, we got to go on the road to start the playoffs. And we may have to go to Baker or Matt Stafford. That's not great, especially when you could have gotten a home field advantage throughout the whole playoffs and gotten the bye. So listen, I am about as excited without my own team being involved, about as excited for this game as I've been for any regular season game. When Brady came back to New England as a member of the Buccaneers, pretty hyped for that game just because of the history there. I can remember games in the past between even some of those Patriot teams against the Steelers. Like, there's been some great ones in the past. Just how much the playoffs itself could flip just from the result of this game. That to me is the fascinating part of it. There was no question after the results of last weekend went that it was going to be the Sunday night game, game 272. I can't wait. I think it's going to be a blast. I'll predict that game at the end of the show to see who wins not only NFC North, but gets the number 1 seed in the NFC with a 15-2 record. See, we got my man Patrick Brown is in the comments. Vikings and Lions will be an epic clash. Sign me up. I look forward to the tense energy between both teams. To think we'll have a 14-win team as a wild card. History in the making. By the way, something else too before we move on. Go and put up the Goff and Darnold stat. Last time these two teams played, both quarterbacks were excellent. I mean, Goff had more yards, more touchdowns, and not as many turnovers and better completion rating. We get that. QBR, same thing. Goff beat him across the board. But look at the completion percentage. 88% for Goff, 81% for Darnold. That combined, I think I saw the stat, is tied for like the first or second greatest game between two quarterbacks ever in terms of completion percentage. It was like 84% or something on average. So 84.5, somewhere in that ballpark on average. So, and that's my main concern is the Lions can score in literally any defense in the league. Maybe not 40 like they did San Francisco Monday night, although who's to say they can't, but they're healthy outside of David Montgomery. They're healthy. They're rolling. The Niners game, listen, risk in playing the starters, but the upside, which I think is going to occur potentially, did provide momentum. The downside is Detroit in the last 5 weeks, you can make a case as the worst defense in the National Football League. Matter of fact, the numbers show it. Okay, points per game, yards, all of it. And for Minnesota, defense, by and large, has been one of the best in football. We know what Brian Flores has done. Should be a head coach. Darnold is playing his best ball of the year. It's going to be fun. It's going to be, here's why I know. It's going to be close. Lions at 2.5 feels like that's like the perfect line. If it were in Minnesota, it should be Vikings minus 2.5. Like Vegas got the line set. I would be surprised if it moves. There's been very much a 50-50 divide on where it could go from the gambling perspective. I can't wait. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube, and be sure to go click that big red subscribe button and check out the other clips and full shows from Carving It Up Live, as well as our other incredible content creators here on the Grid Network.